So in terms of an approach, a strategy, well, use accredited materials, use the official ITIL 4 training resources. No, typically, those will be provided by Aspirex, for example, as an accredited training organisation. I suppose the reason we sort of say this is if you go onto the internet, there are probably lots and lots and lots of documents and information sources on ITIL 4. But of course, exam questions are only ever asked based on the official accredited materials. Okay. Understand, don't memorize. So yeah, this isn't an exercise in seeing how much of what you cover in a course can be memorized and recalled as soon as it's needed. So again, as we said earlier, understand the concepts. Take time to really understand them. If you can relate them to your own work environment, then that's fine. If you can't, then just spend a bit of time to make sure you really, really understand them. So don't rely completely on memory, because to be blunt, there's a lot of material in ITIL 4 Foundation. So, the ability to recall all of it instantly in the middle of an exam is probably difficult. So really get that understanding. And one way you can do that is through sort of visual learning tools. I mean, there are, of course, with e-learning solutions, there will be lots of videos, and there are, in fairness, videos on the ITIL official sites that help to bring alive some of the ITIL 4 concepts. So I find personally, I learn more visually than I do by trying to sort of read books or documents. And another sort of hint and tip is, particularly where there are diagrams or a set of sequences, write them down. Also, the service value chain, excuse me, service value chain and the service value system, if you were to look at them in ITIL 4, visually, they look very similar. One has 5 components, one has 6 activities. Yeah, if you get a question and it's trying to work out, do you know the difference between the service value chain and the service value system? Do you understand the difference between the components of the service value system and the activities of the service value chain? Then actually sketching those out as part of your revision and writing in those component names or writing in those activities means you're more likely to remember, that than if you just try to recall from what you saw on a screen or when you sort of read the notes again as part of your revision. Okay, so yeah, if you particularly learn from that visual, certainly sketching things out, writing things down, more likely to remember them when you need them in the cut and thrust of an exam. Okay. So master the key practices. The reason we make a point of the practices is because there are actually 24 marks. Okay, just think of that. 24 marks out of 40 will be based on those 15 ITIL practices that are covered within the syllabus for ITIL 4 Foundation. Now, even if you got them all right, it's still not enough to hit that magic 26. But a key core amount of questions, are going to be on the practices. So having a really, really good understanding of the practices, being able to recall, the purpose of each practice is going to be really important, because that's where the bulk of your marks are going to be. Okay, so not to say other things aren't important as well in your revision, because you need more than 24, don't you? Yeah. But to give some sort of perspective, the service value system, I think, has 2 marks. The service value chain has 1 mark. The guiding principles has 6 marks. Okay, so when I said about the syllabus and where marks are allocated, we're getting a good understanding of that. But clearly the practices are the bulk of the questions and therefore the bulk of the marks. So probably using the word practice a number of times, this time in the context of, repeating, rehearsing, the mock exam. So typically there are a number of what we call sample papers. Okay, so these are official ITIL 4 Foundation exam papers, yeah, that contain questions which may well appear in future exams, but that particular paper, has been retired. Okay, so the questions are still live and valid. If you imagine, ITIL has a massive question bank, but that particular paper, has now been retired. So it's useful to use it as a dummy run. Yeah. So yeah, 40 questions, multiple choice, A, B, C, D. The answers on the page. Mark down what you think is the right answer. Look at the clock, set the timer when you do it. So, when you complete the exam, you can see how long you took. You may be surprised you've got more time than you think, which means that, when you do the real exam, make sure you use that time. Okay. I've seen some people do an ITIL 4 foundation exam and finish in 25 minutes. Doesn't necessarily mean that they passed. Yeah. So if you've got an hour, use the hour. Okay. If there are some difficult questions you want to go back on, then you've got time to do that. Okay. But can't emphasize enough the importance of doing those sample papers, those mock exams. Yeah. To get into the real sort of exam zone, answer the 40 questions, check your timing, yeah, mark yourself, and then look at what you got right, and of course look at what you got wrong, and those that you got wrong, then of course helps to maybe focus maybe some blind spots you might have in some of the ITIL 4 foundation content. Okay, and every sample paper has at the back what we call answers and rationales. Okay, so it gives the not only what is the right answer, but also why it is the right answer and why the other three options are the wrong answer. Okay, so again, it gives you some insight in terms of why did I get that wrong? Well, you can actually look and find out, exactly from an ITIL 4 perspective, why right is right and why wrong is wrong. So again, so encourage you to do that. So some general tips then on how to pass the ITIL exam, and I think we've been giving you some hints and tips as we've gone along. So yeah, read carefully. So read the question and then read the question. Quite often people read the question quickly and their eyes are already being diverted to the answers. And sometimes they've not fully comprehended what was the question actually about. Sometimes, what is the question? Yeah. Okay. So read the question, then read the question. Sort of in your mind, think, right, what part of ITIL 4 is this really sort of testing my knowledge? Okay. So don't jump in feet first, as a lot of people often do, and then lose marks because they didn't read the question properly. Yeah. If they read it properly, they would have, selected possibly the right answer. Look for keywords in the question. So things like word matching. If there's a question in the if there's a word in the question and one of the options also has the same word. So for example, if it was a question about incident management and there's only one option which actually talks about incident management, then typically there's a fair chance that that might be the right answer. Okay, so sometimes look for keywords in the questions, see if you can find a match. Also get into the discipline of when you read the question, sort of mentally underline some of those keywords. So again, you're focusing the brain on not the big question, but some of the key elements of the question. What are the key words? Just get them clear in your mind. Again, when you're going through those four options. And look for or be careful of things like which are the primary, best, or main, yeah, because that might suggest three answers could also be right, but only one is the strongest. So always look for the strongest answer. So when you see what is the primary, what is the best solution, which is the main way to address, there may be some options in there that actually, aren't wrong, but a little bit lightweight. Yeah. So always look for the strongest answer. Eliminate options. So with multiple choice, typically A, B, C, D, there are always two options. that really are, I don't know what word you might call them, left field, not relevant, plainly probably not related in any way to the question. So try and eliminate those from your thinking. Yeah, as you go through the options, which are the two that really just do not sound like these are anything to do with the question, because there'll be two that are left, yeah, which are closest to the question. And of course, you know, the exercise is to make sure you select the right one. But sometimes when you're trying to read four things, yeah, your brain can start over processing. So the more you can look to, you know, take some out, yeah, focus the brain on the two that are left, and then, as we'll show later, other techniques, hopefully you get to the right solution. And there are no trick questions. Yeah, only one is right. One might be close. Two will probably be slightly left field. Okay. We've already mentioned the importance of the practices. So make sure you do focus and understand the purpose of each of the ITIL practices in foundation, you know. So incident management, the purpose of incident management is to reduce, the impact of incidents and restore normal operation as quickly as possible. There you go. Not rocket science, yeah, but you need to remember those purpose statements for those 15 practices. And if you do, well, it could be 15 marks in your back pocket. We've mentioned the tests. Okay, so practice those sample papers that are provided. Okay, and what I'd also suggest is when we talked about the answers and rationales, and I said, you know, look at what you got right, look at what you got wrong, and then look at, you know, why right is right and why wrong is wrong. Yeah, because that's really useful. Yeah. Also, sometimes look at the questions you got right. Did you get them right for the right reason? You know, you could have had a lucky punt. You got that particular question right, yeah, but you got it right maybe for the wrong reasons. Okay, so yeah, it sounds a bit reverse logic, but look at the ones you get wrong. Obviously, understand, you know, the rationale for why right is right, wrong is wrong, but also maybe look at the ones you got right and look at the answers and rationale to reinforce, hopefully, that you got it right for the right reason. Okay. And then real world application. Well, the way I would pitch this is when you've read the question, you've mentally sort of underlined some of the key words, you've got a real good understanding of the question and maybe the issue that it's presenting, is when you select your answer, you know, pass it back against the question. So in your brain, before you commit it to the paper or as an online exam, you select the ABCD option, just pass it and ask yourself, if I was to do this, would this address this particular issue or this particular challenge? And sometimes just that simple process of saying, if I did this, would this address this particular issue or challenge? Sometimes the brain goes, no, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. So again, little techniques. You might think these all take time. Yeah, but these are really fast things you do. The brain does. Yeah, just get into the discipline of doing them. You'll find, you know, 60 minutes is in most cases more than enough.